Good morning, everyone. I I want to talk about um, something I brought up yesterday in jest with Ron when I said that Ron was going to look at the reason Hashim, the reason God got angry with Moses. Actually, I did look at that yesterday, last evening. However, before I get to that, it's in the 32nd chapter of Exodus. Before I get to that, I want to see if there are questions from yesterday, and I want to make an assessment based upon some of the things that was brought to my attention, questions on yesterday after we had gotten off the phone. First of all, when we are looking at the scriptures, I want all of us to understand something. None of the things that we teach are based upon our opinions. They are based upon what's in the scripture, period. And I want us to understand that the reason we don't teach anything based upon our opinion is because out of all of the people on this earth, everyone has an opinion. But the truth is the truth without regard to what our opinions are. And it is, we are at a critical stage of our journey. And the stage where we are is so critical until we cannot afford to enter any debate. Yet that does not mean we don't want questions. There is a huge difference between the two. If there is something that you don't understand, please ask. However, if it's something that you don't agree with, that's fine. Everyone has the right to choose what they agree with and what they don't agree with. However, what we will not entertain is disagreement with the scriptures. You can disagree with us all day long, all night long, all your life, and you will never get any pushback from that. However, we will not disagree with what the scriptures are saying to us. Why? Because in order for us to disagree with what the scriptures are saying to us, it is no different than what would happen if we were to be at Mount Sinai with Moses and with Israel as they came out of Egypt and built a golden calf. It is no different in our disagreeing with Scripture and the Hebrews being there in the wilderness fashioning a golden calf. So having said all of that, I want us to stay focused on what the Scriptures are saying in relationship to where we are in this juncture of our, in this crossroads, rather, of our life's journey. Therefore, if there are any questions about what I have said a few moments ago, yesterday, or anyone has brought to the table, please raise those questions now. Again, we are not saying do not ask questions, but what we are saying is that the truth of the scriptures is just that, the truth of the scriptures. And we will not move to the left or to the right. We will remain on a steady course of understanding what the Creator has left for us to understand in the writings of what we deem to be the scriptures. And when I say we, I mean everyone who believes that there is a greater being than we are, there is a Creator, believe that these scriptures are a message to us to allow us to become what we were created to be and to travel on this earth journey in order for humanity to be brought to a place of balance and peace and righteousness. Any questions about that or anything else? Any comments about that or anything else? If you agree with what I'm saying to you, I need to know.
So let it be.
I agree.
Yes. Agree.
Agree.
Thank you.
Agree.
So having said all of that, I would that we look at that 32nd chapter of Exodus, and I do feel as though we're going to be here for a moment because my statement to run was truly serendipitous in nature. When I made the statement, it was in jest as I said, and in looking at it, what I saw is that this is more connected to what happened in the beginning than I ever dreamed of it being. Even though for some time I have believed that I have known actually that everything in the scripture takes us back to Genesis anyway. But this is something that I have not seen and been shown rather in the manner that I was shown last evening. My focus was on verses 7 through 10. However, I'm going to back up to verse 1 so we can pick up there and start walking up to those verses that I mentioned earlier. Any questions from yesterday before we get started with where we are going today? No questions. Okay. Verse 1 says, "And when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down out of the mount, the people gathered themselves together unto Aaron, and said unto him, Up, make us gods, which shall go before us. For as for this Moses, the man that brought us out of the land of Egypt, we want not we don't know what became of him. And when Aaron said unto them, Break off the golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives and of your sons and of your daughters, and bring them unto me. And all of the people brake off the golden earrings which were in their ears, and brought them unto Aaron. And he received them at their hand, and fashioned it with a graven tool, and he had made it a molten calf. And they said, These be thou gods of Israel, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt. And when Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made proclamation and said, Tomorrow is a feast to the Lord. And they rose up early on the morrow, and offered burnt and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat, to drink, and rose up to play. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go, get thee down, for thy people which thou broughtest out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them. They have made them a molten calf, and have worshipped it, and have sacrificed thereunto, and said, These be thou gods out of Israel, O Israel, which have brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And the Lord said to Moses, I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. I want to stop there for the moment. What do we see in these verses that have been read? If we look at them, if we look at these verses with through the eye of the Spirit, what we begin to see is that in actuality, the people's expectation was for Moses to return on a certain day. And when Moses did not return on that particular day, they assumed that Moses was dead. And if we scrutinize the verses, what we see is that they did not want a golden calf, a god to replace Hashem, to replace Elohim. What they were saying is they wanted a God to replace Moses. So they saw Moses as being Elohim. They saw Moses as being their God in the earth. They did not understand the unicity between Elohim, our Creator, and the essence of Elohim that we were created to be. And immediately after, when they believed that Moses was dead, they immediately sought to take things into their own hands and bring into fruition a type of being that would be an intermediary between them and the Creator. What are we seeing at this juncture? What we are seeing at this juncture is the inception of religion. I'm not talking about the different branches of religion, as in Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, etc. I'm talking about a religious attitude. What we are seeing at this juncture is the idea, the substance of religion taking place. Any questions about that before I move further into understanding what's happening here at Mount Sinai? Any questions or comments?
Sage, this is Vermel. Could you explain a little bit more when you say about religion taking place? Religion is already, they came from a religious government, but I think I'm missing something here.
No, when they were in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
This is the thing. There were in Egypt, there were rulers in Egypt who did not believe in our Creator Elohim.
Okay.
They fashioned different images, and there were those who saw those images as being God. However, if you read the history of Egypt, what you will find out is that the Egyptians themselves never worshipped those images themselves. They built those images as replicas of what they believed God to represent, as opposed to being God themselves. However, during the invasion of Egypt, the ones who invaded Egypt began to establish a government that manipulated the spiritual beliefs of Egypt so that they would be able to control the people through what they call spirituality, which is actually religion, as well as government itself as legislative bodies. When Moses was in Egypt, Moses learned the ways of the house of Pharaoh. What happened, the truth had begun to be corrupted at that time, and that is the reason that the gestures in the court of Pharaoh or the priests in the house of Pharaoh were able to turn their staffs into snakes or into serpents, and as was Moses when he went back into Egypt. The powers that were there were powers that had been corrupted. And now we are in the wilderness at what is called Mount Sinai. Understand that everything in these scriptures are allegories, and an allegory is a story that tells a spiritual truth. This allegory is speaking to what happened at Mount Sinai. And this morning, I had spoken to Ron. He sent me something about Mount Sinai and what it means. And what he sent, I would ask Ron, would you read that, please? And then I want to discuss it.
Keep talking. Let me find it, because I'm on. Okay.
I think I have it closer than you. Then, if you
okay.
What he sent was deemed as the definition or understanding of Mount Sinai. The word Mount Sinai is a mountain that Israel. Well, Sinai, Mount Sinai is a mountain that Israel met with God upon leaving Egypt. And the Hebrew word sanya means thorn. And this word comes from the root word sin, which is sinun, also meaning thorn. And I'm going to explain it in a minute. Another word derived from this parent word is sineh, meaning thorn bush. The bush that Moses saw burning in Exodus 3 and 2 is sineh. It was not just a burning bush, but a burning thorn bush. Mount Sinai is also called Mount Horeb. The Hebrew word Horeb comes from the root word meaning to lay waste to be dried up, as well as to fight. By definition, the words Sinai and Horeb are synonymous, as a dry wasteland is often filled with thorn bushes. But there is also an interesting connection between the Garden of Eden and Mount Sinai. When Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden, God placed a flaming sword at its entrance. The Hebrew word for sword is Horeb, which comes from the same root that Horeb comes from, which is also the root of Sinai. The burning thorn bush of Exodus is a picture of the flaming sword of Exodus. Now, what am I saying? What is this saying? This is saying that Mount Sinai, there is no difference than Mount Sinai, Mount Horeb, the burning bush, and the word for the flaming sword at the entrance to beginning. Therefore, when we see the scriptures talk about Moses being at Mount Sinai or at Mount Horeb, what the scriptures are actually saying is that Moses returned to beginning. And when Moses went to beginning to receive an understanding of what he was supposed to teach the people in the wilderness. And while Moses was in this place of elevation, this place of beginning, what happened is the people, Moses being physically separated from the people, they got anxious. And in being anxious, they made a decision. They, not meaning all of the people, but those instigators in the midst of the people began to petition Aaron for a god, an image, to replace Moses. The reason they chose a calf because they were familiar with that, having come out of Egypt, and having come out of Egypt, having been under the manipulation of spirituality in Egypt, Moses was in search of clear direction for those he was to lead through the wilderness. Does that help you, Vermeil?
Very much so. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Well, just to further illustrate what you said, I was under the impression, and from what I was taught, that he only went up to this mountain or to beginning a couple of times. He went up first time to get the tablets, and they were broken, and he goes up again. But if I started reading this in chapter 19, and as you can see, he went up several times. So this is saying far more than, I guess, as everything else we see, than I originally saw. In this chapter 32, though, I want you to elaborate a little more, because I want to see. I'm not quite sure how easily religion pops up, how strong, what the stronghold religion has on man. This it may not have happened as fast as it's written here, the way it seemed, of course, but it kind of ties into what we were talking about on last week. We were looking at darkness, and we were talking about being able to be patient enough to see who we are and how long this journey is taken, and the things that God has revealed to us in different lessons and throughout the years, and to bring us to the place we are now, where religion sort of wants to bypass that, and in doing so, you create confusion. And part of that is your desire or lack thereof, and where you are in your relationship with the Creator. So there's a whole lot in here, Pastor. For one, Aaron's actions to me are I don't quite understand. I look at his total role throughout the scriptures and how this all plays out, but his role here is kind of strange to me. I could not find anything significant on earrings. Why earrings of all things? Something told me that they were sacred during that time. Something told me it had to do with the corruption of hearing, not being able to hear with your own satisfaction. Those kind of things. And verse 4 really got to me, where it says, this is your God, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. I mean, that's powerful. That's powerful that they throw that in, knowing that is not the case, but that shows the stronghold that religion has on the minds of men. So, and I know I've said a lot, but can you kind of go into some of that and kind of clarify for me, help me see what all is being said here, please, sir?
Yes. First of all, if you look at earrings, it doesn't say earrings in the original text. It speaks of a nose ring. Now, what the difference is, I have no clue at this juncture anyway. But it speaks of a nose ring. And when it comes to Aaron, if you think about it, those who refused, those who literally worshiped that golden calf died in the wilderness, right? Why is it that Aaron didn't die? Why was Aaron not stoned? Why is it that the people were going to be destroyed, but not Aaron? This is what I'm seeing from background readings into understanding the nature of the Hebrew during this era coming out of Egypt. Moses was 1 day late returning, according to the readings of the period when he left. The expectation, for example, for Moses to return from the mountain, Moses said he would be there for 40 days, and they started counting the day he left. If Moses, according to their counting of days, was supposed to return, let's say the 20th of this month, and when he did not return on the 20th, those instigators in the midst of the people were waiting for that. When he didn't return, they started instigating, and within the span of less than 24 hours, they had instigated to the point where they had pushed Aaron to agreeing to build a golden calf. Now, 1 day later, Moses returned from the mountain. And in doing so, other things took place that I'll get into later on. So this says to me that it does not take long for men who are unaware of who they are to be duped into believing in concepts of religion that has nothing to do with truth. The ones who were the instigators they used Moses' absence as an opportunity to say that we need a replacement for the one who led us out of Egypt. The God who led us out of Egypt is dead now. That's what they said. Because if you read the scriptures carefully, the scripture says the calf was to replace Moses, not God. So they saw Moses as being the God in this earth, but they did not see themselves as being as Moses was. He had not been granted the opportunity at that point to teach them who they were. So those who were craving leadership, those who had embraced the antics of manipulation from Egypt, they hopped on the opportunity to pressure Aaron into doing what he did in terms of agreeing to the calf. Now, it is the contention of the sages that Aaron did it, and the reason Aaron was not put to death for worshiping idol is because Aaron was buying time for Moses to get back, because he knew that the day that Moses was supposed to come back had not arrived yet, and we know what happened when Moses returned, and we will get to that in a moment. So I hope that helped clear some of it up for you, Ron.
Yes, it does. I was just I've seen this before. I just a little shocked at his role in this. It did not seem like, because he even makes a proclamation that almost,
we're gonna have a festive day tomorrow.
Yes.
Now, this is the other part of that. When I look at Aaron, I see Aaron no differently than I see religious leadership today, the vacillation of all of it. I see Aaron as someone who was not as strong as we would think he was. There are, for example, when I first began to see what the truth of the Scripture is, there were pressures put on me by men in leadership, by people in congregations, for me to change the direction of what I knew I saw. And I did not capitulate to that. However, there was someone who was with me in doing this. They did. And they would bow to the pressures of the men who were in leadership, as well as to the pressures of those who were in their congregation. They bowed to those pressures because they were given opportunities to speak and to teach in different places that did not believe as we believe, based upon what we were being shown. And for a period of time, I continued to associate myself with that organization called the association. I stayed in that association because I was close to this person and I did not want to hurt them. Neither was I strong enough at that moment to walk away from it all. And I readily admit that. I know what I saw. And there were times when I was going to walk away from the association, but this person encouraged me to stay there with the understanding, let's change it from the inside. Well, I knew that was not going to happen. Yet, I wanted them to see that. At least that's what I told myself. And then, eventually, it got to the place where I could not deal with it anymore. I walked away, and the pressures continued for me to remain at least connected, if not a part of. Well, this person transitioned, and when that person transitioned, everything opened up, and I completely separated myself from it. I am not saying that it's someone else's fault. I'm not assigning any blame. I'm telling you what happened. And I see this no differently than what took place with Aaron. The difference is I refuse to build a golden calf. The difference is I refuse to give up what I saw. And I believe that Aaron never gave up what he saw the truth to be, yet he capitulated, buying time for Moses to return. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does.
And I'm saying to you that I don't see the relationship between Moses and Aaron any differently than I saw the relationship between that person and me. This is how I see Moses and Aaron. I see Moses as one who came out of the system of Egypt, and he understood the religious and governmental practices of Egypt. And when he came out of Egypt, he had tried to free the Hebrews through political/military means. It did not succeed. He, in essence, was the energy of a Martin Luther King of his day, and it did not succeed. He went to the mountains. He went to this place, and when he left Egypt and went to this mountain of Horeb, what did he find there? He found Midian. He went to Midian, and he found Jethro. Jethro showed him the difference between the religion of Egypt and the truth of our Creator. However, when Moses was leaving the mountain with the sheep and saw the burning bush, this was a period again when Moses returned to beginning. What was he shown? Moses was shown the truth of how to deliver the Hebrews from Egypt. He was shown that the only way to do it was through spirituality and not through governmental/military means. In other words, violence or voting or government was not going to free them. So Moses started making excuses. Moses said, I can't speak. Moses said, they won't believe me. Moses did not want to give up what his quest was to bring the Hebrews out of Egypt through political means. So the Creator says to Moses, your brother is on your way to you. He can talk. He does not speak with a stutter. He will handle it. In other words, what he is saying to Moses is this: I'm going to give you support. The support that I'm going to give you is your brother Aaron. And this was the spiritual support, the strength that Moses needed. If you follow the story, you will not find where Aaron spoke to Pharaoh at all. Moses did the talking. Aaron was representative of Elohim that Moses was, whose Moses' image, the image that Moses was created in, and he was the spiritual energy that Moses spoke from when Moses spoke to Pharaoh, which gave Moses the power to overcome his familiarity with the government of Egypt and desiring to use it in order to free the Hebrews. No different than a Martin Luther King, who made every effort to bring freedom to the African in America by going to the government to get that done. And now we see that that is not going to happen through politics. It happens through spirituality. It happens because Moses, the African, has to realize that it is not the politician. It is the Elohim. And in being that, the politician only looks out for those who make sure that he stays in office. However, Elohim makes sure that balance and peace and righteousness is in the face. Is in the purview of every man. That every man is treated the same because every man is a man yet men, one yet many. So that's how I see Moses and Aaron in relationship to what we do today and in relationship to what was happening during that time. Any questions? Comment?
This is Barbara. Good morning. Just wanted to add that, again, the people had just left Egypt, several weeks before this all happened, prior to this happening. And all they knew in Egypt were symbols of gods. Even the symbols of death were the pyramids. So all they knew were some physical symbols of these words, these things. And even though they had the commandment, they really didn't have the commandments at that time because Moses was trying to bring them down. But they knew that God was the supreme God. seeing Moses as their God. Moses is symbolic of their God. He was their God. Moses gave them the thou shalt not. And so they saw Moses as being the God who had the direct contact. And when Moses did not come back down, they sort of felt abandoned in a sense, because they'd lived in Egypt for 400 years, hundreds of years. So all they had in terms of what they saw were those symbols. So they thought, well, he's not back, so we'll make a symbol of God so that we can still be in direct contact with God. We won't feel so abandoned. That is another way to look at that as well.
Thank you, Barbara. Anyone else?
There was when I stopped and looked at this, I started way back, and because every time I look at it, it would push me back further and further, trying to get to the beginning. And I went back to chapter 19. And chapter 19 kind of reminded me of where we are now. It talked about, those first few verses talked about they had been out of Egypt for 3 months. And at that time they stopped, and where they stopped, it was when you put everything together, look at it, it talks about a place of rest, a place of refresh, a place of support, one to stretch oneself out, and it was talking about bringing comfort. So it was a place of contemplation, a place of looking back at where you are and kind of slowing down or stopping time and kind of seeing things and giving you a opportunity to reflect. And that just kind of reminded me of some of the things we've seen and gone through in the last year or so. This pandemic giving us a chance to reflect who we are. Everybody in the earth given the time to kind of sit back and relax and not worry about those daily responsibilities. And that is huge in this. And so as Barbara said, they're walking forward and they're trying to discover who they are. And there is confusion among them. And all of that has to be burned away, if you will, or purged away, and which is kind of what we're seeing now. Things are being revealed so you can see where you are and what has to be purged.
Thank you, sir.
The other thing, chapter 19, is that you could ask yourself the question: why weren't the people given the Torah to start with? And one of the ways to explain that is that there were so many miracles that had occurred. You had the miracles of the manna. You had the miracle of the sea, so that they could walk through dry lands, and giving the Torah right then and there. It begs the question of whether people really accept it as a free will kind of thing, or because they thought that it was out of gratitude for all the miracles. But they waited a while. They waited until they got a little bit past those miracles, and they started going through the desert and through the dry lands and through the hard times. And then if they accepted the Torah after that, it would be truly out of this free will thing, rather than being obliged to accept it out of gratitude. I don't know if that's resonating with you or not, but it's almost like when we go through a dry spell in our lives, if you will, and we turn more to our wound, it is so much sweeter than if we had had a deliverance immediately, in a sense. It's so much sweeter because you can appreciate what you went through and how you went through it, and sometimes why you went through it after you go through it rather than being delivered immediately.
I see exactly what you're saying, Barbara, because we have gone through, at least I know I have anyway, have gone through periods when everything worked. There were periods when the phone was ringing off the hook. I was going every place teaching, and I saw compound fractures healed. I saw blind eyes open, experienced all of those things, and no one could tell me anything about it did not happen because I saw it. However, when those miracles are dried up in terms of not being able to bring people to a place of healing after having been told, now that you've seen what can happen, I'm going to take you back and show you the reason it happened. And now it's dry. And now everyone is challenging what I'm teaching and telling me I'm not Baptistic. This is not Christian doctrine, blah, 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 blah. And all I've known all my life is Baptist Christian doctrine. And I'm being told that this is not it. And I'm being told that I am to be alienated from everyone else. And all of the positions that I held are being taken away from me in a public manner to humiliate me. And I'm crying, where are you, God? And then I'm reminded of the miracles, but that does not placate me. That does not change the way I feel. However, every time I went through that, I was shown something, some enlightenment in the scriptures that I had not seen before. And it was not in response to, where are you, God? It was in response to the depth of the pain that I was experiencing, but at the same time, knowing what I saw to be true and fighting to hold on to it. That's how I see what you're saying, Barbara. Am I saying it clearly?
Yes.
And go ahead, babe.
I'm sorry. I interrupted you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, good. I thought that was Barbara coming back with something else.
Yeah, she made reminded me of something else. We do see ourselves in this. Barbara reminded me of something. The miracles that were done in Egypt and the crossing of the sea, those experiences of God, we don't hold on to all the time. We see them, but we don't hold on to. The 400 years that she mentioned left a very deep engravement in them. Engravement in your mind, engravement in your heart, and that's what you see. And that is what, when the going gets tough, you turn back to. We forget about those experiences that you talk about. And it becomes hard, as you say, Pastor, to look back at those and say, I remember this, I see this, but that's what we have to hold on to. That's that little part of you that has not been influenced, because this, although it looks like a story that talks about a nation of people, this is talking about the plight of each and every one of us individually and collectively. So if you look at this, the nation of Israel is in me, and is my thoughts that I'm and my very being and the religious concepts that's in me that's being purged out. And the small miracles doesn't seem like it was a lot of them, but all that was is to set the vibration of the rhythm in you to remind you of who you are. It's already there. Because we forget the story of Genesis. Looking back at this whole thing is not just a creating of this physical sphere called the earth and the trees. All this is a metaphor of you. You are the universe. You are the earth. You are the enlightenment called heaven. And the feeling that and the void is what we're doing now. The feeling is the bringing form to it is our understanding and the recognition and the grasping of that. Oh, I feel the rhythm now. I feel that vibration, that thing that's been there all along. Now I see it. Now I experience it. So this whole thing, it just kind of unravels the journey, and all those little pieces that we try to hold on to that we see aren't little pieces at all. They're all a part of the big puzzle. And even the broken pieces that look like doesn't matter to us or has no significance, all of it shapes us, and if we allow it, points us back in the right direction.
And is this not something that's parallel to the plight and the journey of the African?
Absolutely.
You know, for so many hundreds of years, we've had ingrained in us that we were less than nothing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so, like the man who's imprisoned, he doesn't have to be imprisoned in terms of his mind. The people who were enslaved, once freed, they still had to be free and released from that enslavement in their hearts and minds. Same as these people. They've been enslaved in a sense. They've been in Egypt for hundreds of years. And so had to literally be freed in a sense, not physically, but mentally in a sense.
This is something I want to note. It just came to me when you're talking about the African. This is year 500 for the African to enter this country or this land as a slave. It was in 1521 that the African was brought to South Carolina, was first brought to this land as a slave in South Carolina, in the PD region. This is year 500, and I'm trying to remember what 500 means. So that we can get a grasp. If anyone has that at hand, would you please share it with me?
I believe it relates to Jubilee, but I'll check it out. You know, the
Okay.
50.
So, yes, I want 5, 50, and 500. Because I think it's extremely significant. And when I talked about this being a serendipitous experience, it's more than just what I said in reference to Ron looking at this yesterday. It is also serendipitous in that we were led from Nicodemus to begin in anyway. And we are seeing now that Moses had continuous interaction with beginning. What we are seeing is that you cannot really see the picture that's being painted for you if you don't return to beginning. If you refuse or have no desire to be spiritual in nature, then you are wasting your time reading the scriptures. You're wasting your time trying to understand the scriptures. Because if your desires are to remain a part of this natural world, your understanding will not go beyond this natural world. This is a total commitment to spirituality. Your desire, your deepest desire above every other desire has to be for you to know who you are from a spiritual perspective. Otherwise, your thought processes will always be clouded by what you see with your eyes. Does that make sense to you?
Yes. Yes, it does.
So, and I want you to note something else here. What was said to Moses? God did not tell Moses, "My people have changed. My people have become corrupt. He said your people, did he not? He said your people. He's saying you chose to bring these people out. You chose to lead them through the wilderness. These are your people, and Moses did not debate whether or not they were his people. What did Moses do? Moses treated them as though they are his people by virtue of interceding on their behalf. What am I saying to you? When you take the mantle upon you to be the spiritual leader for any group of people, you are taking the responsibility of them being your people. And what happens with them is on your shoulders. This is not a responsibility to be taken lightly. Why? Because the foundation of the earth is built upon the dedication of the human desiring to be the essence of what it was created to be. Every single time when the human did not travel in a dedicated manner in the direction of embracing who it was created to be, that type of human's existence in this earth ended, and another existence of a human was raised up. And that is shown through anthropology and the different types of humans who have inhabited this earth. There has to always be a human in the earth for the earth itself to survive. Nothing on this earth can survive if there are no humans on this earth, because the human is the life of the earth, not because it is a human, it is because of the essence of its creation. Can you see that? Do you understand? There are any questions about that? Now, another reason I see that they were referenced as Moses' people is because Moses was not that much different from them in terms of his human thought pattern. Remember the excuses that he made at the burning bush. What am I saying? Every one of us has the propensity to embrace religion. If we didn't, we wouldn't have done it in the first place. And even now, as our desire to embrace the spiritual nature of our being has become paramount in our lives, we still have within us the propensity to embrace religion. And we have to continuously be our brother's keeper so that we don't get caught up in religion in such a manner that we shroud it in something called spirituality. We have to be extremely cautious as to what we teach, how we teach, and we have to be extremely cautious as to how we treat each other. I'm not talking about each other on the phone. I'm talking about people, period. Even those who we are not close to. Example, we have to be very cautious of how we treat the people in India who are having a tremendous battle with this virus. We have to treat them no differently than we treat our first cousin who lives next door, or our sister, our brother who we dine with periodically. We have to be sure that we see them no differently than we see the one who we see when we look in the mirror. Why? Because these are our people. And the Egypt that we are bringing them out of is the Egypt that was created conceptually by the European. This type of Egypt has been in existence forever and a day, seemingly, and it is up to us to bring a sense of balance to it so that we can bring balance to the earth itself. This journey that's been engaged upon in this wilderness is parallel to where we are today. So when what happens is when the Creator says to Moses that these are a stiff-necked people, what is he saying? Why is it? See, the anger was not so much geared toward the golden calf as it was them being stiff-necked people. The anger came as them being stiff-necked people, and you will see that in a moment. When he said stiff-necked, what was he talking about? He's saying that they're stubborn. he's saying that their neck is so stiff they won't turn. In other words, they would never look backward. They would never change the course that they're on. They're stiff-necked, and they are too proud and arrogant to even consider that they are wrong. They will never admit that they are wrong, and that is no different than what people do. When people get upset in the congregation, or even on these phones for that matter, and rather than admit that they're wrong, or rather than sit and understand what the correct way is, they'll hang up or they'll leave the church, etc. That's what God is saying, that they are stiff-necked people. They are too arrogant to change their direction, and because of this, the whole nation was on the brink of extinction. So what are you saying? If they had been a group of people who were willing to turn from the way of this golden calf, then the desire to destroy them would not have been there. Now keep in mind, what did God say? God says to Moses, I'm going to devour them. I'm going to annihilate them, and I will raise up a nation through you. He was saying to Moses, I'm going to have a nation one way or the other. I'm going to do it through you and destroy these people. And Moses could have said, okay, because that would have made him the big dog. All of the nation that was going to lead humanity to worship was going to come through him. But he didn't do that. He said, if you do this, then the people in Egypt are going to say that you led them with ill will out of Egypt to destroy them. Do not do this thing. And that is when Moses went down to the people. Are you with me? Can you see this? Any questions about this?
I have a question.
Yes.
So we have that same responsibility that Moses had.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Because I'm responsible for how and what I do with the people who I come in contact with.
Yes.
Okay.
See, what did God say to Moses? Get away from me. Leave me. So that I can really get angry with them. In that ninth verse or 10th verse. He said, get away from me so I can annihilate them. What did Moses say? No. Why would you do that? And that's when he said to him about Egypt. The Egyptian would say that he could not keep them in the wilderness. He brought them out there to kill them. So, and then he reminded of something. Now let me back up a moment. How do I see this with Moses speaking to Elohim? Moses is at beginning. So it is not Moses, the human who was in Egypt. This is Moses, Elohim. This is the essence of Moses' spiritual nature that is speaking with its creator. And Moses' spiritual essence is saying to its creator, don't destroy them. Now understand, it would have been the human bodies destroyed. It would not have been the essence of their being, because that cannot be destroyed. So what am I saying to you is, when we are in a state of meditation and we talk about receiving enlightenment from the universe, what we are receiving enlightenment, we are face to face. We are in the presence of the essence that created us, that brought us into being. And being in the presence of that essence, we have opportunity to bring humanity to a place of balance. We have the opportunity to do the righteous thing. And that's what Moses did. We do have communication with the essence that we were created with, with the Elohim that created us in its essence. we have that, and the same enlightenment that we seek from Elohim. Elohim, this enlightenment comes from Avun. So what I'm saying is that we have, it is no different than a child being the essence of his parent and being able to go to that parent and discuss things with that parent, or say to that parent, don't punish the so-and-so and so-and-so because they have no clue as to what they were doing. That is no different than what Moses was engaged in at this place of beginning. No different than when a child goes to its parent, it's going back to beginning also. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, sir. But it's even more powerful than that, Pastor. What he's saying in verse 12, if I can get this right, if I can say it right, he's saying that religion would say you being enlightenment could not handle this. And religion would be the one that says, look at what enlightenment did, because it could not handle the people. It could not handle those who say, it says that he's called out to rescue. He could not rescue them. Enlightenment failed. So religion wins in this. If there's, carrying out what Moses said, religion wins because religion says, okay, you brought them. Enlightenment could not get this done, so it destroyed them because it could not get this done. So religion takes it up, takes the upper hand in the understanding of this. If you're looking at it from a spiritual perspective, does that make sense? You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do see what you're saying. Any comments or questions about that?
Pastor Rev, isn't this at some point where the priesthood evolved or was created, and so you did have kind of that separation from the spiritual and religion?
Yes, would you start over again, please?
From the Aaron and Moses situation, isn't it the beginning of where the priesthood began, and you have the religion and spiritual sort of separation? And this is where I guess man needed to be careful, because this is sort of where it began to evolve into the priest, representing God, and man really relinquishing some spiritual power, that split.
Yes. Yes, this is the genesis of it. And this is a place of caution. And on the heels of what you just said is, out of all the things that we have been shown, out of all the things that we've taught, out of all that we understand, we are at that place right now. We are at that place where the priesthood and religion and spirituality are intersecting. That's where we are. The thing that brought us to that place is a plague called the pandemic. We have to make a decision. The decision that Joshua presented, whether we are going to submit to the God on this side of the river or on the other side. That's a decision to be made. Are we going to follow the Levitican priesthood as it traveled a journey of selfishness, or are we going to follow the essence of the spirituality that Jesus introduced to us that brings about a sense of revelation as to the essence of our being? Are we going to be the deliverers as was Jesus, or are we going to be the manipulators as was the priest, which is the difference between religion and spirituality? Is that the essence of what you're saying, S?
Yes, I'll just kind of this, I guess the term intersection, that makes more sense. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Anyone else? If you have the question, it's important. If it were not important, you wouldn't have the question. If there was a statement that's come to you to expand or to bring clarity, it is there because the universe, the Creator, wants you to bring it. So do not refrain from that. Every question that you have is for, if not for you, is for someone else. It is imperative that we engage in these discussions as a unit because that's who we are. No questions, no comments. So where are we now?
When you're ready, we can discuss 500.
Okay, go ahead.
So I guess five. The number 5 deals with making life changes, spontaneity, and curiosity. You're gonna be not surprised, but wait until what it all adds up to be, so to speak. 0 deals with eternity, infinity, oneness, wholeness, and having flow and energy and unlimited possibility. When it comes to the number of 500 together, 500 deals with freedom, sudden freedom that is driven through curiosity that can also happen extremely quickly, as if a reminiscence of one walking through a portal. And that's what 500 circulates around, or what it embodies. It is that immediate, infinite freedom that is driven by the curiosity of the individual, and them suddenly having the courage and personal freedom to live and serve their soul mission, as driven by their intuition and their inner knowing.
Okay.
500.
Now, would you sum that up, sir? Or someone, not necessarily you.
Yeah, tie it back to what we were talking about. Bring that back to my memory.
The 500 was, this is the 500th year of the African entering this nation as a slave. And that was in South Carolina. That tells me that is the reason that so much of the brutality that involved slavery emanated from South Carolina, and South Carolina being the first state to secede in order to preserve slavery, all of that energy is centered here. That speaks volumes to me about that.
To I guess start it off in terms of expanding a little bit more in terms of what that means. It more so means that the curiosity to step beyond or go that beyond, I want to say religious edicts and teachings, but also to embrace that which is within, and discovery based upon doing that, but also based on being driven by curiosity, automatically brings that freedom, but not just freedom as it relates to physical freedom in terms of like bondage and slavery, but also spiritual. And I actually think that there's, of course, a connection between the physical bondage that was connected as a result of some type of spiritual bondage. So it is a freeing of that suddenly. But also the part about it being very quickly, and then also the entire thing is driven by the inner curiosity as if something is being unlocked. So it's no outside source is something that is actually been determining to allow this to happen. I guess it's more so akin to with the 500, this being a lot more easily accessible in terms of mention a portal and it happening quickly. and it's on the last part is there's unlimited possibility in terms of what that freedom looks like, but also in how quickly that actually happens. So that's the idea of it happening instantly. There is nothing that is out of bounds, so to speak.
So maybe, I guess what I'm listening and tell me if I'm off. The more the situation that you find yourself in leads you to spiritual freedom. And even though it may be a type of bondage or an enslavement, the spiritual freedom that you have has no boundaries. It's endless. And it leads you to a place where you can see not only who you are, but have the ability to go to beginning and offer freedoms for not only yourself, but to the universe without limit. And it's all based on your desires to be free based on your physical restraints. So the tighter that seems to be on you, the more, for lack of a better term, the more spiritual power that you have or have opportunity to.
Yeah. Yes, but I would go even further and to say, so 500 tends to focus on the positive sides of things. And so with the curiosity, it is almost as if it, in a sense, is a denial of the not being free, and it is embracing and innerly saying that I am free. And as we embrace that immediate thing happens, and that's from that's what we're talking about in the transformation through a portal, or something happening instantly. It is that the curiosity or the defiance to say that this is what I am leaning on, this is what I'm focused on, this is what I'm believing in, and then that thing begins to take place. And when I say defiance, that means in spite of what has transpired during the past 500 years. And this comes where the endless possibilities comes in, that because conventional wisdom would say that it's no way possible that suddenly after 500 years, one could go through a portal and immediately have this the spiritual freedom that we're actually talking about.
That's in creating a world where we are free.
Say that again.
That's creating a world where we are free. Going through the portal.
Yeah, okay.
So see, the what we consider secular history is inextricably tied to spirituality, and that is the reason there is such a fight to keep us from knowing or understanding the essence of who we are. When we begin to understand the essence of who we are, everything begins to shift. And we are at that point of shifting right now. That is why it is imperative that we stay the course and be extremely serious and focused on what we are about. This essence of change, of freedom, does not pertain only to the African. It is everyone. The African cannot free itself without freeing its enslaver as well. Jesus says they have no clue as to what they are doing during the period of his crucifixion. And I am saying that the enslaver has no clue as to what it was doing and to whom it was doing it. Only thing it could see was what it wanted. And what it wanted was material gain, and was willing to do whatever it took and to sacrifice whomever it had to in order to get what it wanted. And it wanted this material gain without having to work for it. It did not have the means, it did not have the ability, it did not have the intellectual strength to bring about the comfort levels that it desired. So it forced those who were capable of it into serving them, as opposed to being the servant to humanity that the African was brought into existence to be. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes. I wanted to comment on that as well. As you were talking about in slavery and stuff like that, and you talk about the power that we are. And when I say within, I just mean the power that, like I said, we are. But the power that we have within, the power that we are, is far more than that anything that is done to us or any condition that we are put in. And so with the convincing of other people, individuals, and entities, etc., on who we are, the greater effect on us is what we buy into and what we believe, far more than anything that ever could be done to us. And part of that, as you talk about freeing the everyone, including the enslavers, is completely tied to the power within in terms of what we believe internally. I'm finished. I guess to also add to that, I am not saying that anyone, including myself, is a terrible person or anything like that for how we may have handled situations and certain things being done to us, and not even saying that whether or not we deserve those things or not. What I'm actually saying is showing where the true power lies that many of us, including myself, have not realized or walked in, I guess, many, many times in my experience here.
This is Barbara. Want to just add to what we just said about 5 and 500. Hey is the fifth letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and it also means breath and air, spirit and femininity. To add to what Sheldon said about power and strength, it means power and strength, and curiosity. It also means breath and air and spirit and femininity. And when you put that with any zero, which he's already said, is infinite possibilities, or limitless possibilities, or eternal possibilities. When we connect when we connect our circumstance, meaning 500 years having been introduced as enslaved people in this country, when we connect that to the spiritual knowledge of who we are, there is power and strength, and that we can do anything. The impossibilities are limitless, meaning there are no impossibilities.
And Barbara, that further supports what Sheldon just said about the experiences, and you know, you those can't be separated. All of that makes up the whole, and it empowers you when you embrace it all and see where you are. And once you recognize who you are, you embrace all of that. and that's the power therein. That's the power of it all, because it talks of endurance, it talks of discipline, it talks of carrying that and being burdened down and now seeing the freedom of it all and where it's taken you, and it's just an unleashing of all of that, and so none of that can be excluded. All of that has to be embraced, and that just makes sense. It just kind of adds to it. It makes it limitless. Makes it limitless when you recognize who you are.
It's like we are a flower that's a seed that's been placed in the earth, and the reason we have not been aware of the limitless power that we are is because we have been in the darkness of ignorance. And now that we've begun to reach for the light, we are shedding the ignorance that we have been shrouded in, and we're beginning to see who we are, not so much by looking in our mirror, but looking in the face of each other and seeing that we are indeed each other. And in doing so, realizing that with the statement that Jesus made, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing, is our constant mantra as well. Forgive them, for they don't know what they do not know what they are doing. By seeking to enslave us for earthly comfort, they are dooming themselves to the eternal suffering in this earth realm, and without realizing that to listen to the heartbeat and the essence of the African is to be in rhythm with the universe. And in being in rhythm with the universe, you begin to realize that you don't need to enslave anyone to bring you to a place of comfort or acceptance. If you come to realize who you are and the power of your being, then all you have to do is say, abracadabra, I create with words, and bring into being all of those things that are necessary for survival in this earth, but more than that, also for comfort in this earth, without having to do it on the backs of anyone. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Thinking about, as you were saying that, in terms of Jesus' thought, or you could even say vibration, his feeling towards those when he was asking for those people to be forgiven. And we think about the saying, being the bigger person. And the idea of being a bigger person is not just supposedly being the grown-up, of being the more mature person. That is something that, going back to what we were just talking about in terms of the enslaver, that is something that Jesus had to feel deeply within for him even to be one with the Father, and as you said, the universe, because as long as he holds some disregard for those people, regardless of what it is that they were doing to him, he would internally be keeping himself separate from them because he was opposed to them and truly disliked them. So it's not just that he was extending grace and mercy to them and looking at it from the standpoint of whether or not they actually deserve, him judging whether or not they decide that mercy or grace or whether he was going to grant it. But if he did not grant it, it would have had, like I said, an effect on him in terms of his ability and experience to walk and experience the Father. Wanted to point that out.
Suppose, Sheldon, that if Jesus had not said that, then we have not been the people who are so forgiven as we are now. Could he and overriding the anger and hatred that Israel had towards the Romans, and also overriding the hatred that the priests had for themselves, which was expressed by them being in concert with the Romans and what they were doing in Palestine during that period. That statement opened a portal for us to be forgiveness as well. And think about it. What did Jesus say to the Canaanite woman who was a Gentile living in Canaan? What did Jesus say? Jesus said, it is not fit that you would feed the bread of the people to the dogs. He said, I came to Israel. I was sent to the nation of Israel, the children of Israel. And she said, even the dog eats the crumbs that fall to the floor. And Jesus responds by saying what? I have not found such faith in all of Israel. Be thou healed. So what was he saying to her? What he was saying to her, I was sent to the African. I was sent to bring understanding of beginning to the African. Why? So that when you understand who you are, you can free everyone else, including yourself. But then when that Gentile woman said, by virtue of her saying, even the dog eat the crumbs from the floor, she is saying, I am willing to do whatever it takes to have this understanding. I am willing to sacrifice whatever is necessary for me to be in concert with you as you travel this journey teaching. I want this. What she was saying to generations is, I want to be on these streets with you. I want you to know that it hurts me that George Floyd was killed the way he was killed. It's not just your African heart that hurts. It is my European heart that hurts as well. It is me, the Gentile, who also hurt. I know I cannot understand what you feel, but I do know what I feel. And my pain is not your pain, because you are part of what happened to George Floyd. I am an observer of it and seem to be a perpetuator of it. But I promise you I'm not. I feel the pain. And that's where we are now. We are in a place of shared pain. You don't feel the pain that I feel with your foot on my neck, but you can feel the cries of my heart because of the foot on my neck. That's where we are. And in this place where we are, religion has no place, because religion is no different than greed, self-perpetuating. It is power-hungry and will do anything to maintain its power. And this is what we are seeing at Sinai. This is what we're seeing at the cross. This is what we are seeing in the 64 bill, voting rights bill. This is what we're seeing in the decisions of the Supreme Court. This is what we're seeing right now. And we are the ones who have been chosen to be the point of the spear to pierce the darkness, in order for the light to be shown to everyone who's willing to embrace it. And we must do this without any distractions. If you can see a membrane being pressed against with the point of a spear and is not yet broken, every time we submit to a distraction, it takes us longer to pierce that membrane. And the longer it takes us to pierce that darkness, the more suffering people are going to encounter. And it is time for us to refuse to entertain distractions and make sure that we pierce the membrane, we pierce the darkness, so that the light can flood the hearts and minds of humanity, and the soul of Adam can be awakened, so that Adam can see that it is everything and everything is it, as opposed to being in a state of extrication from the garden of righteousness. Now it can enter this place of righteousness and peace, this place where everyone enjoys the pleasure of the presence of its Creator. Questions or comments? Is this making sense to you?
Yes, very much.
I say all of this to say also that this thing started with understanding that anger is not on our behalf as individuals, but our anger is on behalf of humanity. But it must always be a righteous anger. It can never be a type of anger that is going to destroy. Even though the essence of the anger of Elohim in relationship to Sinai was annihilation. And that anger of annihilation was brought to a place of halt, was brought to a halt rather by the created interceding with the Creator on behalf of the created, as opposed to protecting itself and allowing everyone else to be annihilated. There was a reminder. You promised Abraham, Isaac, and Israel that you would make a nation for them, out of them, that outnumbered the stars, Moses said. If you look at the original translation, he did not say Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He said Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, because Jacob's name had been changed to Israel. Why? Because out of the loins of Jacob came the 12 tribes, meaning that a people who were willing to listen to the voice of its Creator and bring deliverance to all of humanity, thus delivering the earth from all the damage that humanity has done to it. When the consciousness of the earth is healed, then the earth itself is healed. When humanity comes to its senses and realizes that the earth is not here for them to destroy for greed, that the earth is here for the sustaining of the vehicles that we call bodies. It is at that juncture that the healing begins to take place, and we cease to have to endure periods of prolonged heat in places where they're not prepared for the Northeast. The storms that are beyond measure now, the amounts of rain that are destructive as opposed to being life-sustaining. We are able to do these things when we embrace who we are. And if your mind is saying to you, there are those who would never embrace it, it doesn't matter. The Scripture does not say we need all of humanity to stand in the gap for the sustaining of humanity. It says a man who will stand in the gap, a type of Adam who will stand in the gap. A type of Adam who will stand in the gap means what? Means a type of human who realizes it's more than human, a type of human who understands that it is the essence of its Creator. And because it is the essence of its Creator, it is the portal through which the light is channeled for the purpose of opening the eye of humanity, to the extent that humanity embraces it and changes the course of everything in this earth, everything in this universe. The course of it is altered. The desire to go to Mars or to the moon, to mine that for greed, All of these things must be brought to an end. And it is our burden to carry. It is incumbent upon us to embrace and to carry these burdens, not so much with ease, but with determination, never to quit, and without any search for a reward for doing it, but simply doing it because it is the righteous thing to do. Yes, feelings are going to be hurt. People are going to get upset. But the greater good is for humanity to realize that it is one not only with itself, but with its Creator as well. Any questions about this?
This is Barbara.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I heard someone else. Should I yield?
No, go ahead.
In the final analysis, what I see is Moses is that type of man who stood in the gap on behalf of the people, so that God did not annihilate them. But what I saw even more so is that for the man, or for the type of man, the type of human who understands who he is or who she is, and is willing to do that, I understand even more so the relationship with Abun, because that type of human is even able to speak to its creator on a par with, let's talk about this. Let's talk about what you're saying and what you're doing. It's just that the creator has given that type of human even so much more power. If he can talk to God and say, okay, remember who the people are. Remember who you are as God. Remember what people will say about you. That's a lot of power that the Creator gave to Moses to acknowledge that, yeah, I hear you, and I will, I will not destroy the people because of what you said.
And what you just said, Barbara, is totally antithetical to what Christianity, Islam, and all the religions teach. We have been taught that you cannot influence God. God's mind is made up. That's not true. This thing with Moses has so many messages to us. If the Creator is not a respecter of person, then that means what Barbara just articulated about Moses interceding and changing the direction of the desires of the Creator, we have the same power to do that. We simply have to embrace it. It's not about faking it till you make it. It's simply about repeating it until you believe it. This is who we are. The reason words are on the page is so we can be reminded by going back to them and looking at them again. And every time we look at them, there is light shedded on something we did not see before. And we have not even scratched the surface of the scriptures that we have read this morning. We have simply begun to see the surface area of them. But what's beneath the surface is beyond anything that we could ever imagine. I do embrace and believe that the depth of our curiosity has brought us to the doorway of the portal that will give us instant freedom if we choose it. When we look at what Moses brought down from the mountain, one of the sages says what was engraved on it, the word that was inscribed on it actually speaks to freedom. So what Moses brought down was a message of freedom to those who believed that they were free. A freedom not just from the chains of Pharaoh, but a freedom from the system that had indoctrinated them and orientated them to believe in that they needed someone to be between them and the Creator. And we are at that place. The freedom that Moses brought down to be taught was shattered. And it is my belief that if we look at these scriptures, what do we see? The shattering of these words on this that were inscribed on those tablets was the shattering of the teachings of what it means to be free and the direction of freedom. Lo, all these years have passed since we analyzed from the original text the Ten Commandments or the ten principles inscribed on those tablets. Now we are beginning to see retrospectively that these are the principles of freedom. Not just freedom from chains, but the principle of freedom from the indoctrination of religion, freedom from the fear of the nature of this earth, the ravages of floods and the ravages of storms, freedom from our own fears, freedom from the bondage that we have imposed on ourselves by not looking deeper and desiring to understand what's written on the pages. I do believe that when we look at the commandments again and we see things like thou shalt not commit adultery, we see that adulterous relationship is every Sunday morning or every Saturday with religious interactions, and that when we look at thou shalt not cover thy neighbor's wife nor his ass. In other words, your greed you should not have a greed that brings you to desire what someone else has. You should understand that everything that you need to be sustained in this earth is there for you. All these things that are involved here, these things that thou shalt not have any engraven images, it's not just something that you have engraven with your hand or an idol as is in this calf, but it's also the inscription of idolatry on your heart. I have to wear a white dress in order to serve communion. I got to serve communion, otherwise I'm not going to be accepted into heaven. These are idols that we have been forbidden to engage with, yet we do it all the time. We are no different than acquiescing to the building of a golden calf. The communion table is no different than a calf with the sacredness that we add to it. It is no different than idolatry. And those, if you read the story, you will find that all of Israel did not die in that wilderness. Those who worship, those who submitted to that, those are the ones who were killed. Those are the ones who found death in the wilderness in their place of confusion. And I am saying to you emphatically today that when you submit to the idolatry of that communion, to the idolatry of that anniversary, to the idolatry of all of those things that are tantamount to the church itself, you are committing idolatry, and you will die in your ignorance. The wilderness that we are in is not something that is devoid of water or devoid of vegetation. The wilderness that we are in is a wilderness that blinds us to the presence of the water of life, that blinds us to the vegetation that comes as a result of life. That wilderness has brought about a drought in our soul. And that drought in our soul has created friction within these bodies because we know that something is wrong, but we don't always know what it is. It just doesn't feel right. It does not resonate. And it irritates us when we see leadership taking advantage of people who don't know any better. And for us to buy into that is no different than those who bought into a golden calf being a God that could replace Moses. We must unequivocally refrain from those things, and we must, without any excuse, walk away from and free others from the antics that have kept them in this religious bondage all of their lives for generation after generation after generation. It is something that we have been burdened with, and it is something that we must free not just ourselves but others from. This is our journey. This is the life that we have been chosen for, and this is the life that we have accepted. Any questions or comments about that? Before there are any, let me say this. If you are not committed to this journey, then why are you on the phone? Why are you on Zoom? Why are you on Skype? Why do you even read the book? Why do you even think anything about an afterlife if you are not committed to the truth of what's in the book? Any questions or comments?
I think there was someone who had a comment before Barbara spoke.
I think that was me, George. Ron.
Okay.
Began to speak again. And now, if it was, please make your comment or raise your question. Okay. Did you have something to add, Ron?
No, sir. I think you summed it up beautifully.
Anyone else? Today we've heard mostly from the facilitators discussing this, the teachers discussing this. If there are questions, please raise them, regardless of whether you are a teacher or not. It doesn't matter. All of us are teachers, come to think of it. So, okay. I suppose then that we are done. Now, keep in mind that tomorrow we will not be on the phones tomorrow. And we're looking forward to coming together again the next weekend. If there are questions that you desire to raise before we come together again, please give one of us a call or text message or email or something. And in other words, just reach out to us and we'll do our best to respond to whatever your query is, okay? Have an enjoyable day, and we will speak with you later on. This
Thank you,
ends our
Pastor.
discussion.
Thank you.
Hey.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Be safe.
Have a good evening.